I opened the envelope with the DNA test results, and my hands were trembling not from excitement, but because somewhere deep inside, I already knew the answer. My name was Leon, I was 33 years old, and I worked as a broker in Miami. My wife Camilla taught mathematics at a local school. We had been married for 10 years, and 5 months ago our son Jake was born. It seemed like our life had finally become complete. But something had been wrong from the very beginning. It all started with a strange gift I found in her closet 2 months ago. An expensive silver crescent moon pendant with an engraving on the back, for my star. Oh, I had never given her anything like that. When I asked about it, Camilla got flustered and said it was a birthday gift from a work colleague. But I remembered her birthday well. She wasn't wearing any pendant then. The way she reacted to my question should have told me everything. Her face flushed, her eyes darted away, and she stumbled over her words in a way that was completely unlike her usual confident demeanor. Camilla was a math teacher. Precision and clarity were her strong suits. But in that moment, she couldn't form a coherent sentence. I let it go then, telling myself I was being paranoid. But the seed of doubt had been planted. That's when I started noticing other details. Camilla often stayed late after work, explaining it was for extra tutoring sessions with students. She became cold, distant. When Jake was born, I expected it would bring us closer together, but she seemed to distance herself even more. Sometimes, looking at our son, she had this guilty expression on her face. I remembered the night Jake was born. I was there in the delivery room, holding Camilla's hand, telling her she was doing great. When the doctor finally held up our son, I felt this overwhelming wave of emotion. I was a father, but when I looked at Camilla, expecting to see that same joy reflected in her eyes, I saw something else. Fear, guilt, and something I couldn't quite identify at the time. One evening in October, when the leaves outside our apartment window were turning yellow and falling, I decided to act. Jake was sleeping in the nursery, and Camilla was taking a shower. I went into her phone. The password was our wedding date, ironic, right? There I found correspondence that turned my life upside down. My hands were actually shaking as I scrolled through the messages. Part of me wanted to stop, to put the phone down and go back to ignorant bliss. But I couldn't. I had to know. Each message I read felt like a knife twisting in my gut. They talked about their meetings, about how exciting it was to sneak around, about how foolish I was for not noticing. Oliver. That name flashed in the messages again and again. I remembered. This was the guy who once dated Angelika, Camilla's best friend. They broke up about 5 years ago, but apparently Oliver and Camilla had kept in touch. And then that contact turned into something more. I vaguely remembered meeting Oliver once, years ago, at a party Angelika had thrown. He was charming, good-looking, the kind of guy who commanded attention when he walked into a room. I hadn't thought much of him then, just another face in our social circle. Now learning that he had been sleeping with my wife, that he was the father of the child I thought was mine, I wanted to find him and make him pay. But I controlled myself. Rage wouldn't help me now. I needed to be smart. The correspondence dated back a year. A whole year. They had been meeting for a year before Jake was born. And after. The messages were specific enough to leave no doubt. But the worst was yet to come. I found one message sent 3 days after our son was born. He looks like you. Oh, I don't know what to do. Oliver's response was cold. That's your problem. I'm not ready to be a father. Leon is a good option. Let him think it's his son. My wife's response? I think the same way, Camilla wrote. I felt something break inside me. I quietly put the phone back and left the room. The next day I secretly took a DNA sample, mine and Jake's. Sent it to the best lab in Miami. And now, 2 weeks later, I was holding the results in my hands. Probability of paternity, 0%. Jake was not my son. I sat in my office, staring at the paper, planning my next steps. Camilla thought I knew nothing. She continued playing the role of a loving wife and mother. But I was no longer the naive Leon I had been a month ago. Those 2 weeks waiting for the results had been torture. Every time I looked at Jake, I saw Oliver's face instead. Every time Camilla kissed me goodbye before work, I felt sick. But I maintained the facade because I knew that showing my hand too early would be a mistake. I needed to gather all the evidence, build an airtight case, and then strike when they least expected it. The first thing I did was contact my lawyer, Roy. An old friend from university. He specialized in family law. When I showed him the test results and screenshots of the correspondence, he whistled. Leon, this is tough. But we can use this, he said. We need to act quickly and smartly. Roy and I spent hours going over my options. He explained that with the DNA evidence and proof of infidelity, I was in a strong position. But he also warned me that Camilla could try to claim that I had accepted Jake as my own, which might complicate things. That's why we needed to move fast, before she could establish any kind of legal precedent. Then I started digging deeper. It turned out that Camilla had been doing things I hadn't even suspected. Our joint bank account had lost a lot of money in recent months. I had always trusted her with finances. She said she was buying things for the baby, furniture, clothes. But when I checked the statements, I saw transfers to an unknown account. Large sums. Regularly. The amounts were staggering. Thousands of dollars gone. Money I had worked 60-hour weeks to earn. Money I thought was going toward our future, our family, our son's college fund. Instead, it was funding her affair. I felt like such a fool. How had I not noticed? But then again, I had trusted her completely. That trust, I realized, had been my greatest weakness. I hired a private accountant, Luke, who helped me with investments. In 3 days he found out. The money was going to an account registered to Oliver. Camilla was financing her lover. My money, which I earned sitting 12 hours in the office, analyzing markets and taking risks, was going to support the man who was sleeping with my wife and was the biological father of the child I thought was mine. Luke also discovered something else. Camilla had been making cash withdrawals, large ones, that didn't show up anywhere else. When I asked him to dig deeper, he found that she'd been using those cash withdrawals to pay for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts for Oliver. She'd even bought him a watch that cost more than my car payment. My money, buying gifts for the man who was destroying my life. I felt rage, but forced myself to think coldly. Roy advised me not to show Camilla that I knew everything. Let her continue. The more she messes up, the better for you in court, he said. For a week I lived in this lie, pretending normal life. I came home, smiled, held Jake in my arms, even though everything was burning inside. Every time Camilla kissed me, I felt disgusted. But I waited. That week was the hardest of my life. I had to sit across from her at dinner, making small talk about our days, while knowing everything. I had to watch her with Jake, knowing that every tender moment between them was a reminder of her betrayal. I had to sleep next to her at night, feeling her warmth beside me, and pretend that everything was fine. It took every ounce of self-control I possessed. The moment came when I decided to act. It was a cold November evening. Camilla said she was going to a teacher's meeting. I hired a private investigator, Eva, who confirmed. Camilla was meeting Oliver at a motel on the outskirts of Miami. Eva took photographs. Clear, undeniable evidence. The photos were damning. Camilla and Oliver entering the motel together, Oliver's hand on the small of her back. Them kissing in the parking lot. The timestamp showed they stayed for 2 hours. 2 hours while I was at home with Jake, the child that wasn't even mine, playing the devoted father. Eva also got photos of them at a restaurant the week before, holding hands across the table, looking at each other the way Camilla and I used to look at each other in the early days of our relationship. But I wanted more. I wanted them to feel the same thing I felt. Through Roy, I contacted Angelika, the same friend of Camilla's who once dated Oliver. It turned out she knew nothing about the affair. When I told her everything, showed her the evidence, she was in shock. Camilla? My best friend? With Oliver? She couldn't believe it. But the anger in her eyes told me everything. Angelika broke down crying when I showed her the evidence. She told me that Camilla had been there for her when Oliver broke her heart 5 years ago. Camilla had held her while she cried, told her she deserved better, helped her move on. And all that time, apparently, Camilla had been keeping in touch with Oliver behind Angelika's back. The betrayal cut deep for both of us. Now I had a plan. While Camilla was playing happy family, I was systematically transferring our joint savings. Legally through my lawyer. I was withdrawing cash in small amounts so as not to arouse suspicion. Everything went to my cousin for safekeeping. He lived in Dallas and agreed to help. My cousin Roy, different Roy from my lawyer, didn't ask many questions when I called him. We'd always been close, and he could hear in my voice that something was seriously wrong. When I explained the situation, he immediately offered to help. He opened a separate account, and I wired the money there bit by bit. Camilla never noticed because she was too busy with Oliver to pay attention to our finances. By the end of November, I had transferred almost 80% of our joint money. I left only what was necessary for current expenses. Camilla noticed nothing. She was too busy with her lover. Then came time for the final act. I organized everything for Thanksgiving. Symbolic, isn't it? The day when families gather together to be grateful for what they have. I invited Camilla to dinner at an expensive restaurant. She was surprised. We rarely went to such places after Jake was born. But she agreed, smiling happily. My mother agreed to babysit. I chose the restaurant carefully. It was upscale, public enough that Camilla wouldn't make a scene, but private enough that we could have a serious conversation. I made reservations for 7 o'clock, right during the dinner rush, when the place would be full but the ambient noise would give us some privacy. At the restaurant I ordered champagne. Camilla looked at me with curiosity. "Leon, what's happening? Are we celebrating something?" she asked. "Yes," I answered calmly. "We're celebrating the end of our marriage." Her smile disappeared. "What?" I laid out folders on the table. DNA test results. Bank statements. Photos from the detective. Screenshots of her correspondence with Oliver. Camilla turned pale. Her hand trembled as she took the papers. "Leon, I can explain." "Don't bother," I interrupted. "I know everything. Jake is not my son. You've been cheating on me for a year with Oliver. You stole our money to give it to him. You lied to me every day for a year." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Leon, please. I didn't want to. It just happened." I smiled. "No, Camilla. It didn't just happen. You made choices. Every day. For a year." I handed her another paper. "This is a divorce petition. I've already filed it. Roy says with such evidence the process will be quick." She stared at me, not believing. "You can't. Jake is not my son," I repeated. "And you knew that from the very beginning. You let me get attached to him, knowing the truth." "I loved you," she exclaimed. I shook my head. "No, you never loved me. I checked your correspondence. You wrote to Oliver that I was just a convenient option, that I provided the stability he couldn't give. You both used me." Camilla was crying, but I felt no pity. I thought about all those nights when she stayed late, about all the lying smiles, about how I planned our future, thinking we were a real family. "And one more thing," I added. "Angelika knows. About you and Oliver." I told her everything. Camilla's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "She had the right to know what kind of friend you really are," I answered. "She's already contacted Oliver. Seems he wasn't happy to learn his secret was revealed. Actually, when Angelika confronted Oliver, he denied everything. But the evidence was undeniable. And Angelika had her connections. She worked at a PR company and knew how to spread information. Soon all their mutual acquaintances learned about the affair. Angelika didn't just tell a few close friends. She made sure everyone in their social circle knew exactly what had happened. She posted vague but pointed messages on social media about betrayal and false friends. She made sure that at every party, every gathering, people were whispering about Camilla and Oliver. It was social annihilation, and it was exactly what they deserved. Oliver panicked. He was a junior manager at a large corporation where reputation meant everything. When rumors about his relationship with a married woman and a child he refused to acknowledge started spreading, his career was under threat. Oliver's boss called him in for a meeting. The company had a strict ethics policy, and while what Oliver had done wasn't technically illegal, it reflected poorly on the company's image. They couldn't have someone in a management position who was known for such behavior. Oliver was given a choice: resign quietly or be fired with cause. He chose resignation, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. In his industry, word travels fast. And Camilla? Her school was small. Everyone knew everyone. The principal, who happened to be acquainted with Eva, yes, the same Eva I hired as a detective, accidentally mentioned the situation during a conversation. Soon parents of students started complaining, demanding that Camilla no longer teach their children. The school board held a meeting. While they couldn't fire Camilla for her personal life, they could make her position untenable. She was reassigned to administrative duties, away from students. The humiliation was complete. She had loved teaching, and now even that was taken from her. I felt no sympathy. She had taken so much from me, my trust, my money, my sense of family. This was justice. The divorce went quickly. With such evidence, Camilla couldn't demand anything. The apartment was in both names, so we sold it and split the money equally. But since I had saved most of our savings in advance, she received much less than she expected. Jake stayed with her. Technically, I had no legal rights to the child after confirming I wasn't the biological father. That hurt the most. Not because of Camilla, but because of the boy I had grown to love during those 5 months. But I couldn't continue living in a lie. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. Camilla tried to get back together with Oliver after the divorce, but he rejected her. I never promised you anything, he told her when she came to him with Jake. This is your problem, not mine. I heard about that confrontation from Angelika, who heard it from a mutual friend who happened to be there. Camilla had shown up at Oliver's apartment, Jake in her arms, begging him to take responsibility. Oliver had looked at the baby, his biological son, with complete indifference. I told you from the beginning I didn't want this, he said. You made your choice. Now live with it. Then he shut the door in her face. The last information I received about Camilla, she moved to her parents in another city. Lost her job. Friends turned away from her after learning the truth. Oliver also suffered. He was fired from his job after the story became known in the company. It turned out corporate ethics doesn't approve of such things. Me? I started a new life. Moved to a new neighborhood in Miami, away from memories. Focused on work, and it paid off. My investments started bringing better results than ever. Maybe because now I was working not for a fake family, but for myself. My new apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay. Every morning I woke up to the sunrise over the water, a view I could never have afforded when I was supporting Camilla's secret life. I filled the place with things I actually liked: modern art, a proper home office setup, a sound system that Camilla would have complained was too expensive. It was my space, purely mine, and it felt liberating. Sometimes I think about Jake, about how he laughed when I lifted him up, about his little fingers wrapping around my finger. But then I remind myself he wasn't my son. He was the result of a year of lies and betrayal. A year and a half has passed since that November evening at the restaurant. I don't regret my decisions. Camilla made her choice, Oliver made his. And I made mine. I chose self-respect and truth instead of comfortable lies. Life goes on. I learned not to trust blindly, to verify words with actions, to protect myself. Maybe it made me more cynical, but it definitely made me stronger. The events of that year taught me valuable lessons. I learned that trust must be earned, not given freely. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can cause the deepest wounds. I learned that love without respect is just an empty word. I also learned that revenge doesn't have to be about destroying someone else. The best revenge is building a better life for yourself. When Camilla sees me now, and she does occasionally, Miami isn't that big. She sees a man who's thriving. A man who's successful, confident, and happy. And I know it eats at her, knowing she gave all that up for a man who never really wanted her. I ran into her once at a grocery store about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. She was with Jake, struggling to manage both the baby and her shopping cart. She looked tired, stressed. When our eyes met, I saw regret there, maybe even longing. But I just nodded politely and walked past. I had nothing to say to her. That chapter of my life was closed. Oliver's life fell apart too. After losing his job, he struggled to find another position in his field. Word travels fast in professional circles, especially in a city like Miami. Nobody wants to hire someone known for lacking integrity. Last I heard, he was working a job well below his qualifications, barely making ends meet. As for Angelika, she became one of my closest friends. The shared betrayal brought us together in an unexpected way. She understood what it felt like to be deceived by people you trusted. We meet for coffee sometimes, and she's told me more than once how grateful she is that I told her the truth, even though it was painful. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The late nights at work. The distant looks. The way she always kept her phone face down. The sudden interest in her appearance that she claimed was just taking better care of herself. But when you trust someone completely, you don't look for reasons to doubt them. That was my mistake, not the trust itself, but the blindness that came with it. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, but the realization that the life I thought I was building was built on sand. Every moment of happiness from that year was poisoned retroactively. Every smile she gave me was a lie. Every time she said, "I love you," was just part of the performance. And Jake. God, Jake. Even now, knowing he's not biologically mine, I sometimes miss him. I miss the weight of him in my arms, the baby smell, the way he'd grip my finger. But I remind myself that attachment based on deception isn't real. The child I loved was a fiction, a prop in Camilla's elaborate lie. I've moved on romantically too, though I took my time. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first. I wasn't ready for that. But eventually I met someone, a woman named Rebecca, who works in finance. We've been seeing each other for about 8 months now, and it's different this time. Better. Built on honesty and mutual respect. Rebecca knows the whole story. I was upfront about it from the beginning because I refused to start another relationship with secrets. She was understanding, patient as I worked through my trust issues. She never pushed me, never demanded more than I could give. That patience meant everything. We met at a work conference, actually. She was presenting on market trends, and I was impressed by her intelligence and confidence. We got to talking over coffee afterward, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, genuine connection. When we started dating, I told her about Camilla and Oliver on our 3rd date. I watched her face carefully as I spoke, looking for any signs of judgment or pity. Instead, I saw compassion and understanding. The financial aspect worked out in my favor too. Not only did I protect our savings, but my career took off after the divorce. Without the stress of maintaining a failing marriage, without the constant drain of Camilla's secret spending, I was able to focus completely on my work. My portfolio grew, my client base expanded, and within a year I was making more than I ever had. I bought a new place, a condo in a better part of Miami with a view of the ocean. Every morning I wake up to that view, and I'm reminded that this is the life I built for myself. Not the life someone else convinced me I wanted. Not a compromise. Mine. The legal proceedings revealed even more than I initially knew. Roy discovered that Camilla had opened a credit card in my name without my knowledge. She'd racked up thousands in debt, all of it going to support her lifestyle with Oliver. Fancy hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts. All on my credit. That discovery actually helped in court. It proved not just infidelity, but financial fraud. The judge was not sympathetic to Camilla. In fact, I was awarded damages for the fraudulent debt, which she's still paying off. The Miami social scene being what it is, I've run into Camilla a few times since the divorce. The first time was awkward. We were at the same charity gala. She tried to approach me, but I simply turned and walked away. I had nothing to say to her then, and I have nothing to say to her now. The second time I saw her, she was with Jake. He was bigger walking now. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a pang. But it passed quickly. That child is Oliver's responsibility, not mine. The courts agreed. I have no legal or financial obligation to him. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that Camilla eventually moved back to Miami after a year with her parents. She found work at a different school district, one where nobody knew her history. She's trying to rebuild her life, I suppose. But the damage is done. Her reputation in our old circles is destroyed. Most of our former friends sided with me once they learned the truth. As for my family, they were incredibly supportive throughout everything. My mother, who had been so excited about being a grandmother, was devastated to learn the truth. But she never wavered in her support for me. My father, usually not an emotional man, told me he was proud of how I handled things. That meant more than I can express. My parents had loved Camilla like a daughter. When I told them what she'd done, my mother cried for hours. Not just for me, but for the grandchild she'd lost. She'd already bought Jake's first Christmas present, had plans for teaching him to bake cookies when he got older. All of that was gone in an instant. But despite her pain, she told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Looking at where I am now versus where I was 2 years ago, it's night and day. Then, I was living in a comfortable lie, thinking I had everything figured out. Now, I'm living in truth, and it's so much better. The comfort wasn't worth the cost. I've learned to trust my instincts again. I've learned that it's okay to verify things, to ask questions, to not just accept what people tell me at face value. Some might call that cynical. I call it wisdom earned through experience. Sometimes late at night, I think about alternate timelines. What if I'd never found that pendant? What if I'd never checked her phone? Would I still be living in that lie, raising another man's child, bleeding money to support my wife's affair? The thought makes me shudder. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.